The horror must be stopped. Obstacles destroy!
Come to me!
If you liked the video or yoinked my POB, I would really appreciate you to subscribe on YouTube, as it costs you nothing and it means a lot to me. Also, if you have any questions or want to just come chill with the boys, I'm in Twitch down in the description. Go ahead, click it. Low life Carrion Elementalist is an extremely tanky, high single target, no button, no brain, no problem kind of build. It is perfect for heist content with its 90% maximum elemental resistance, immunity to elemental ailments, yes, that's shock, freeze, chill, scorch, brittle, and ignite, 69% physical damage reduction, 28% physical damage taken as cold, fortify, and nearly 2000 ES regen per second on top of 250% movement speed. This build can take a hit, regen it back, and before you realize it, your Carrion Golems have taken care of the threat. This is my favorite build for doing grand heists, as a death can mean losing multiple exalts, and I never die, even when I walk away during lockdown. Did I mention you can run through lasers? Talina lasers. This build will not have the high clear speed a BV bomber build would have. Although you can use Breathstealer Blight Gloves for a free anoint and explosions from your minions, which helps clearing those legions and maps a lot. Another downside to this build is going to be its cost. The full cluster setup is going to cost about 28 exalts. I have included a 1 cluster setup for 19 and a cheap body armor and other cheap upgrades, which can still give you 7 million Cyrus DPS and 86% maximum resistance, which is pretty good. You can also play the included life-based version, which only costs a few exalts now that we're into the league and all the golem jewels are starting to come down in price. You will also be leveling as this life-based version, as we do need to be about level 90 to get enough points to use all of the clusters and pick up all of the aura nodes. I will have this life-based version in the path of building with a complete tree setup, leveling guide, and skill section, so no worries there. Let's talk about how our abilities are going to scale their damage. So, our golems scale off of minion damage, physical damage, our insane aura effect, buffing our auras to the extreme, and our golems impaling our enemies. Let's talk about how our aura effect is working, as this is the main point of the build and is the easiest part to mess up. So, you need to pay attention. You need 300% increased aura effect from 6 passive mediums and everything I selected on the tree and Conqueror's Potency, unless you go the Necromancer route. How can you find out how much aura effect you have? Well, you don't have to count. We can use Path of Building to count for us. First, go to the Calculation tab and select an aura. Any aura will work, and you can see its aura effect mod. Now, if your aura effect mod when you import your character is not 3.0 or higher, then you goofed up and you missed some aura effect somewhere. You might have selected the wrong medium clusters. Maybe you missed Conqueror's Potency, or maybe you missed some nodes on the tree. You do and should want, for the full cluster setup, 3 times aura effect, as this does give us 90% maximum resistance and a lot of regeneration. You also will need level 23 purities to hit 90 max res. You need level 21 gems and +2 corrupted Syntrex. For the cheap setup Syntrex, we can get a level 21 0 quality Vol Impurity and pick up +2 duration Syntrex, because the Vol Impurity is counted as a duration spell when it has the Vol Impurity corruption. So we can do that, although now your Vol Haste does take a little bit longer to get all of its souls, because you also have 3 impurities that are taking Vol souls as well. It's not too big of a deal, and it does save a lot of money, so if you're strapped for cash, I do recommend doing that. But you absolutely need to have level 23 purities, as that is the next threshold for an extra max resistance that we scale from our aura effect. So let's talk about why we chose Elementalist over Necromancer. Well, with our Carrion Golems, all of our auras, and our curse from our skitter bots, we do have enough damage that we do not need the attack and cast speed aura from Necromancer. On top of that, the aura for the attack and cast speed from Commander of Darkness is very small, sort of like Torrent's Reclamation. So, our Carrion Golems that use Leap Slam moves to move away from us and attack monsters will, on average, be moving out of the attack and cast speed auras. So the extra attack and cast speed that we get from Commander of Darkness does not end up helping us, except on single target bosses like Cyrus or the Conquerors. The huge point of playing Elementalist is that we get 2 extra maximum golems as well. That's insane. Also, our golems will be immune to elemental damage. This is extremely helpful when you run through lasers in heists and in high level content like delirious maps. We get more regeneration from a buffed up stone golem, since we get so much golem buff effect, and more physical mitigation than bone barrier from a buffed up chaos golem. On top of all that, we get elemental ailment immunity. Poggers. That means we are immune to ignite, chill, freeze, shock, scorch, brittle, and sap. That is insane. And as a little bit of an extra little bonus, we get 8% reduced damage taken from each element we've been hit by recently. So, if after hearing all that, you're still not convinced, yo, just go Necro. You can just go Necro. It's totally okay. If you like Necromancer, you can play Necromancer. The build is almost unchanged if you want to go and play Necro. Elementalist is just how I prefer to play, as I take all of these bonuses at a higher value than everything that Necromancer gives. which is some damage from the levels, movement speed, and attack speed that you get, extra attack and cast speed from Commander of Darkness, and some fizz mitigation from Bone Barrier. I like everything from Elementalist way more than I like everything from Necromancer, but if you don't, that's totally fine, man. Go ahead, play Necromancer. There's nothing wrong with it. Nobody will shame you. Let's talk about the Ascendancy points. The first one that we are going to choose is Legion of the Primordial. We picked this up right away in normal lab because it makes our golems immune to elemental damage. We get 20% increased damage per golem, 25 effective buffs granted by our golems per golem, and 1 max golem. Next, we are going to take Elemancer. We get 20% golem damage per golem, 35 chance to avoid elemental ailments per summon golem, 25 effective buffs by your golems per golem, and an extra max golem. From Merc Lab is Paragon of Calamity. This lets us take 8% reduced damage taken from each element that we have been hit by recently. And last, there's not much to pick up other than Pendulum of Destruction for 75% increased area of effect for 5 seconds every 10 seconds. For our bandits, we are an aura stacking character. Those skill points are extremely valuable. We will be picking up 2 skill points. Our pantheons will be Soul of Lunaris with the Hallowed Husk to avoid chains off of our minions, and Soul of Abereth because Burning Ground is pretty annoying. All right, let's talk about the path of building that I've created and curated for you guys. We have multiple trees all the way from level 1 to 12 through the life with no cluster section, the life build with a cluster jewel setup, the low life cheap setup, and the low life expensive setup as well. If you have any questions about this build, feel free to come to the notes section as it is very detailed and helpful. Or just come to my Twitch channel and ask me live, as I can help you figure out your problems and help solve them if we can just communicate one-on-one like that. I also have a leveling skill section, a life setup skill section, and the low life skill setup as well. Of course, we have our leveling setup, life, cheap, no clusters with expensive cluster setup, the low life ES cheap setup, and the expensive setup, as well as the Animate Guardian setup, which we can talk about in a little bit. Let's talk about how you're going to level your Golemancer. So we are going to start off by coming straight to minion instability. We will be using this until we can equip both of our clay shapers later on, and we can make a full transition to a golem build once we get those clay shapers on. But until then, we will be minion instability. If you played my Syndicate Operative Spectre build, this will be a sort of familiar playstyle for you, as we will be using skeletons and SRS later on. From 12 to 35, you are going to do your normal lab and pick up Leech of the Primordial. We are going to get Death Attunement, come down here and get the Sacrifice Wheel, which will help the survivability of our zombies, as well as picking up some life. 35 to 55, we are going to pick up the only Golem Wheel on the tree for an extra max golem and some buffs, some more life and minion damage wheels, and we are going to pick up Unwavering Stance so that we cannot be stunned, which makes the build feel so much better when nothing is interrupting your movement and running. We will also pick up Elemancer in Cruel Lab for the extra golem and golem buffs. In Merciless Lab, we are going to fill out the rest of our tree with a bunch of life from Purity of Flesh, Devotion, Barbarism, coming down to the Scion Life Wheel, as well as picking up Indomitable Army to help our specters and zombies remain alive. The life with no cluster jewel setup is going to be an extension of how we leveled. As we don't have any cluster jewels, we can pick up a lot of life, the entire Scion Life Wheel and every jewel socket on the way there. All right, so that was the leveling tree. Let's talk about the actual skills you're going to use while leveling. From about level 1 to 10, we are going to use Storm Blast Mines until skeletons feel good. We will use Storm Blast Mine alongside Orb of Storms You're going to put your Orb of Storms down and start spamming your mines. Once you hit about level 8, you can use Summon Skeletons alongside Infernal Legion, which will have your skeletons take 40% of their max life as fire damage, but they are going to gain a fire damage per second aura around themselves. This, alongside the minion instability, will cause your skeletons to deal fire damage around themselves while attacking, and when they reach low life, they will explode, dealing even more damage. This is a very, very nice way to level every minion build that you can play. It should only take one cast to clear each pack. We will link Melee Splash for even more area clear. Once you hit level 8, you can pick up the zombies, raised zombies. They will die for a while until you pick up a couple more minion wheels, but that is okay. Don't really worry about them right from level 8. I would say maybe level 15, 20-ish when we've picked up a few more minion wheels. They should be okay and only die maybe on some bosses. From 8 to level 38, we are going to use SRS for single target only until we pick up the Unleash support. We will use Summon Raging Spirits with Infernal Legion and minion damage, just like we did with these skeletons. But instead of Melee Splash, since these will be for single target only, we will use melee physical damage support. Our movement ability is going to be Frost Blink from level 4, and then Flame Dash and Smoke Mine from 10 onwards. I like to use Smoke Mine and have detonate mines on my left mouse button. So I only have to throw the Smoke Mine, it will instantly detonate, and then I Flame Dash. And we do Smoke Mine because it gives a movement speed buff that scales with the gem level, and it pairs very well with Flame Dash, and it looks and feels really cool to get your Smoke Mine Flame Dash. Your leveling is just so much faster. It's very much worth it to have that one extra button. So as soon as we can, we are going to pick up Summon Skitterbots for its Shock and Chill aura, Dread Banner for the Impale chance that we will use later on, and Pride for enemies taking increased physical damage. Now, you can use some different auras since we aren't technically going to be a golem build just yet, but if you don't want to be confused and you don't want to have to deal with swapping a bunch of gems around later on, it's totally fine to just stick with Pride and Dread Banner and Skitterbots for now. I would just be leveling Pride but not have it enabled just yet. Now from level 38 onwards, we are going to use SRS and Unleash for our single target and our clear. We can do this now with SRS because Unleash will save up casts of SRS up to 3. This means that we can cast 4 Summon Raging Spirit Skulls at the same time instead of needing to stand there and cast a bunch. This is extremely, extremely good for pack clearing and single target, as we can get so many SRS skulls out so much faster. We will still be using Infernal Legion and Melee Fizz, but now we are able to use Melee Splash and Feeding Frenzy. We can use these if you have a Tabula. It's totally fine to not. It works on a 4-link. Don't worry about it if you don't. We are going to just put Flesh Offering anywhere, and anytime you can use it, you should pop it. If you want to pick up a Desecrate as well, so that you can use this on bosses, that would be a very good idea as well. Now, at level 41, you can equip Clay Shapers. This is going to allow you to have 2 extra maximum golems, which is very nice. So now you can swap to a golem setup if you would like, or you can have your golems in maybe a 4-link somewhere and keep SRS in the 6-link if it feels very good. With a Tabula, it is very easy to swap these in and out. So just go with whatever feels the best while leveling. Once you hit Act 7, now you can start to use Raised Spectre. Now before you hit Act 7, you want to pick up Raised Spectre and start leveling it up from Act 1. And once we hit Act 7, if you would like, you can pick up the Solar Guards, which will help supplement your single target and your clear. These are very nice as they have an area of effect sort of die beam, and they shoot a bunch of these tiny little fireballs, which is very nice for your clear. Our zombie setup now is going to be Zombie, Stone Golem, Meat Shield, and Melee Physical Damage to help our single target out, as well as to keep our zombies and our golem alive, and to taunt. Now this setup should carry you all the way through the entire leveling process As you pick up all the Elementalist Ascendancy points, your golems are going to start to feel better and better. And you're going to make your way towards the mapping setup, which we will now talk about in the life setup. So coming out of maps, now you want to focus down on the golems and sort of drop that SRS sort of setup with. So we're going to use Carrion Golem. Now, as soon as you can, you want to get a level 21 Carrion Golem, even if it's 0 quality. This should only be 5 chaos. That is a steal for how much damage a level 21 minion gives you. To that level 21, perhaps 0 quality golem, we are going to link Impale, as Impale supports physical attacks very, very well. Melee Fizz for more damage. Multi-Strike to get Impales and to deal damage much faster. Minion damage. And Brutality, which gives us a ton more Fizz damage, with the downside that we can't deal elemental damage, which is totally fine. In our weapon, we are going to use Dread Banner, Pride, and Generosity. In our helmet, we are going to use Raise Zombie, Raise Spectre, Meat Shield to taunt and to make them take less damage, and Blood Magic, because the Spectre we're using is going to have to use mana to cast an ability that gives our minions Frenzy and Power Charges. But when we link it to Blood Magic, it now uses its life to do that. So it can give Frenzy and Power Charges much, much more often, which is very, very good. You are going to go to /global 6666 for all of your Spectre needs, as this is the Necromancer global channel. If you type /global into your chat, followed by the 6666, then you only have to ask for They of Tull and go to that person's hideout, desecrate, and raise the Tull Spectre, as this is a very good one as well, giving us 20% additional damage reduction, attack, and spell dodge. It's crazy. Other than that, we are going to get Carnage and Host Chieftain, which are those power and frenzy charge specters. You can find Carnage and Host Chieftain in the Act 7 zone, Ashen Fields, which is very, very nice. For the life setup movement, we are going to use Flame Dash linked to a lower level Second Wind and a Flesh Offering in our offhand. We're going to use Flesh Offering whenever we can while mapping to just boost the Carrion Golems and make them much faster and much better. We are going to use in our glove slot a Summon Stone Golem, Summon Chaos Golem, Maim, and Feeding Frenzy support. We use Maim because enemies maimed by supported skills take 14% increased physical damage, which is very good. Also, Feeding Frenzy, that gives all of our minions 10% more damage, which is very good. In the left ring only, we will put Vulnerability. We only do that in the left ring because Profane Proxy will substitute the Chilling Aura for a Vulnerability Curse. Now, you can also swap this out for Punishment if you would like a bit more clear, as Punishment will cause overkill damage on cursed enemies to explode outward, which is very nice. It's a sort of free explosion. Other than that, they're both red gems. You can both socket them in. You just need to make sure that it is in the left ring slot. You do not want to override the Shocking Aura. Shocking is very good. We want everything to be shocked. Shocking is a lot of damage, but we don't care about chilling too much. We kind of want to override the Chilling Aura. Lastly, in our boots is going to be a Cast When Damage Taken, Immortal Call, Skitterbots, and Phase Run setup. Now, do not link Cast When Damage Taken to your Phase Run setup. You want to be able to put this on your left mouse button so that anytime that you start running, you gain the Phase Run buff, which gives 41 more move speed. That is really, really nice to just have a move speed buff. And later on, when we pick up more dexterity, we can level this up more. And in the low life setup, we will link it to increased duration so that we have Phase Run on almost all of the time. It is very, very nice to have that. It's like an extra pair and a half of boots on top of your head. Now that we've talked about the leveling for the life-based version, let's go through the gear for that before we talk about low life. So, as soon as you can, we are going to equip some clay shapers. Before that, it does not matter too much what you use. You can kind of equip whatever you'd like. Maybe you find a shield that has some resistances. Whatever works is totally fine, as you can get carried by just a tabula rasa and skill links for a very long time. Our helmet is going to be gold rimmed to cap our resistances. Of course, we use tabula to give us 6 links that we can swap out freely. The gloves, we just want to pick up life, and then if you need it, you can get some dexterity. The Wanderlust boots are very nice to stop us from being frozen, giving us some movement speed and mana regeneration. Just pick up some life or whatever you need on your amulet. We're going to use Le Hoop of all iron rings to give us some resistance and attributes. And if you can afford it, a String of Servitude with 45 to all elemental resistances is very nice. Our flasks are just going to be Quicksilver for movement speed, Silver Flask for the Onslaught, which is movement speed, Divine, a Life Flask with Staunching, a Flask with Warding, and a Basalt Flask. Now, for the actual mapping life gear, this is going to be a few exalts, but this is the cheap no cluster setup. We're going to pick up 2 cold iron points, which are about 7 chaos right now, as these boost our Carrions, our Animate Guardian, our Golems all the way through the roof with +3 levels. Our helmet is going to be life and resistance. Our body armor in the cheap setup is going to be a Wall of Brambles for the insane armor that it provides us, which is very, very nice. For only 20 chaos for a 6 link of this. It is very good. Our gloves are going to be life and resistance, trying to get as much chaos resistance where you can. Our boots, life, move speed, and chaos res, alongside whatever else you need to fill your resistances out. Our amulet is going to be our amulet is going to be one of our only sources of dexterity, so it's very important that you get a lot of dex on this. More important than any life or any other resistance, unless you really need to cap your resistance. On the tree, I do pick up some dexterity and strength here, as well as the 2 dex nodes here. But other than that, our amulet is one of the only spots that we pick that up. We are going to use Profane Proxy to get a free sort of blasphemy aura for our vulnerability or punishment curse. We are going to pick up life and resistance on an unset ring. This is the last spot that you can get some dexterity if you need it. Our belt is going to be Darkness Enthroned, which is very nice. It has 2 abyssal sockets, giving 75 increased effect of socket jewels, and in that we are going to put jewels that are like this. Now, whatever you can get is totally fine, but now in this Darkness Enthroned, we are going to put some life and damage jewels. You can get the minions deal increased damage if you've used a minion skill recently, or you can pick up some minions deal additional fizz damage. Both are very nice and get scaled very well by this belt. We are also going to try to pick up a max life and taunt on hit with attacks. So, monsters do not attack us and instead attack our golems and our zombies. Our flasks are going to be an instant life flask that removes bleeding. If you can get it, an Alchemist Quicksilver Flask of Adrenaline, which gives us 83 movement speed, which is crazy. A Silver Flask of Warding, so that we can be immune to curses while we map, alongside giving us the Onslaught buff, which gives us 20% movement speed. We are going to get a Warding Flask again, just to make sure, since we're immune to elemental ailments. We might as well get Warding again, this time on a Quartz Flask to give us phasing so we can move through monster packs and chance to dodge attacks and spells. And lastly, we are going to get a Basalt Flask with anything you need on it. This is another spot that you can get the Removing Bleeding mod, Staunching on. We are going to get this for extra physical damage reduction. Now for our jewel section, the very first thing that you should work your way towards is the Primordial Might Jewel, which is about 70 chaos right now. This gives golem damage, but the most important part is that your golems are aggressive. This will make clearing with your golems much better, as they will seek out and heat seek towards enemies to attack and kill them, which is very nice for our clear speed. Next, you want to get 2 primordial harmonies, giving us damage and regeneration for our golems. Now, after 2 harmonies, you do want to get the anima stone, because now we do have 3 primordial items socketed or equipped, which gives us an extra 2 max golems, which is very, very good. Now you can do 4 carrions, a stone golem, and a chaos golem, which is very nice. Next, you pick up another 2 primordial harmonies for more golem damage and regeneration. In the expensive life setup, we are going to pick up the brass dome for even more armor that Wall of Brambles gave us, and we take no extra damage from critical strikes, giving us crazy survivability. This is also where you can start to pick up cluster setups, the most important one being Rotten Claws. Until you get Rotten Claws, you will not be impale capped, which is pretty bad for your damage. So you want to focus down and get a large cluster with Rotten Claws as soon as you can. Renewal would be very nice as well, but if you are very strapped for cash, you can wait to get renewal until later. You want to focus on Rotten Claws. And for our 2 medium clusters, we will get Dread March for move speed, fizz damage reduction, and chaos resistance. It's very nice for our Carrion Golems, as they will be immune to elemental damage, and fizz and chaos are the only things left to worry about, as well as renewal on the mediums as well, giving a 10% chance to deal double damage on full life, practically 10% more damage. We will get that on both mediums as well as the large. In the medium sockets, you will get primordial eminences, giving golems flat armor, attack and cast speed, and 30% increased buff effect, giving us more life regen from our stone golem, fizz damage reduction from our chaos, and extra damage for our carrion. The next big upgrade we can pick up is a +3 minion helm and anything else that you can get on this, mainly being resistances and life. This +3 will help keep our zombies, our specter, and our AG alive if you chose to make an Animate Guardian. The last huge upgrade for our life-based version is going to be a +1 physical and +1 intelligence skill gem amulet. We are going to anoint on this Ravenous Horde, which will give our Carrion Golems onslaught on kill, more move speed, damage, attack, and cast speed, which is very, very nice. This amulet is going to cost a lot, so this should be perhaps your last upgrade before you start to get ready to do the low life version, if you don't already have enough money to do it. Okay, now that we've talked about the life-based version, let's talk about the low life cheap ES. This is cheap in quotations, as it will cost around 19 to 20 exalts to get it up and running and feeling comfortable. Now, in the low life ES cheap tree, we will need at least 1 large cluster and 2 medium cluster setups, alongside being at a minimum level 82 for it to feel very, very nice. Although if you do take away the energy shield on this cheap setup, you still will have 4,300 energy shield, although that is not too much. It is enough for lower level content because we will have a lot of max resistance from our purities. It will not be 90 max res, but it will be enough to compensate for the lower energy shield. On this cheaper low life setup, we can focus on getting a lot more energy shield while we save up for an entire extra cluster. We can get every ES wheel and the intelligence wheel, which does give us a lot of ES. We can also come over and get the Written in Blood hybrid wheel, which is very, very helpful. Now, we also need to pick up every single aura wheel except all the way down here. We will not get Champion of Cause, but we will get every other cluster we will get every other aura wheel. We are going to get everything in sovereignty, everything in influence, everything in leadership down here, and we will also path down with an intuitive leap socketed in this cluster setup. We will save 3 points and we will get the reduced mana reservation and charisma. Do not forget to get the small aura effect passive right here, as we do need this for extra max resistance. Also, it's very important that you pick up, when you're leveling, you can grab Conqueror's Efficiency for free if you do the quest in the bathhouse and grab that little bust from the guy that shield charges around. You get a half exalt or more. You can get around 40 chaos or more for free while you level, as the meta right now is aura stacking, and finding uncorrupted Conqueror's efficiencies is impossible because it is a leveling only item. So make sure to do this quest, get a free 40 chaos, which should more than pay for everything you would need in the cheap life version and get you on your way. Even though we need Conqueror's potency for our build, it is better to pick this up and sell it, and then go and buy a Conqueror's potency later on. We do need the 3% increase effect of non-curse auras that this jewel gives. There are plenty up that are corrupted, and it is more than fine to get a corrupted version, as we don't care about any corruptions. We just need the increased effect of our auras. So you can sell Conqueror's Efficiency, the red one, the Crimson Jewel, for about 40, and you can pick this up for about 4 to 5 chaos, which is a steal. So with all of these aura wheels, Conqueror's potency, and every aura effect that we can reasonably pick up on the tree, we will combine that with these large cluster setups, giving us 2 mediums. On the large cluster setup, you can use the exact same Rotten Claws and Renewal large cluster that you used in the life-based version, but you need to pay attention to the mediums, because there are 2 different medium clusters that will give you enough aura effect to hit the threshold once you hit 4 of these combined with the entire tree and jewel. So for our medium clusters, we want to get 6 passive aura effect cluster jewels, and we're going to take all of the little ones because these do give us aura effect. On the cluster, you either need to get First Among Equals alongside Replenishing Presence, which gives us a lot of regeneration, or you need to get Replenishing Presence with the mod Added Small Passives have 25 increased effect. Both of these will give you the exact same aura effect. So down in the description, I will link a direct trade link to these exact jewels. You cannot do it with a 4 or 5 passive. They need to be 6, and these will cost you 3.5 to 4 exalts each, which is why I included a life-based setup, because they are fairly expensive. This is the cheaper low life based version. So for the cheaper version, we will still use a cold iron point, but now our shield will be Prism Guardian to give us blood magic for the socketed gems, and it will cause them to reserve less mana, which is very, very good. We will carry over that +3 minion gems and anything that you could get on it, helmet, and since we are trying to be a sort of budget-ish version of low life, we can save about 6, 7, or maybe even 8 exalts, depending on Chevron's prices, by just getting a 6-link Solaris Larisica. Now, going from a Solaris to a Chevron's does give us a lot of damage, does give us a lot of energy shield, but as you can see, we're at 6,200, and with Shavs we go to 7,700. So even with Solaris, we still have 6,200 energy shield, which is totally enough with the max resistances we have at 84 without that extra large cluster setup. Our gloves are going to be another source of dexterity, chaos res, and energy shield. These can be as cheap as you need, as with no gloves, we still have a ton of energy shield here. Now, our boots are going to be a little spicy depending on how much money you have. The best option is +2 aura corrupted on the Sintrak, but we can do +2 duration, because if you're poor, you can do the Vol Impurities. Now, the important part to get max res, I talked about it earlier, is to get a level 23 purity gem. The easiest way to do this is to put it in our boots with a +2 corruption and with a level 21 gem. Now, if you can afford the +2 Syntrack and each of these gems, which is about an Exalt each, then you should do that. But if you're super poor and you want to get started, you can buy a +2 duration and pick up 21 0 quality Vol Impurity of Ice, Fire, and Lightning. This works because getting a Vol version adds the duration tag. The duration Syntracks are about 40 Chaos to an Exalt each, depending on who's online, while the +2 Aura Gem Syntrack are about 3 to 7 or more Exalts. So it is a much better budget option to get the duration with the 21 impurities than to get the +2 Aura Gems, Syntracks. But you do need to get one of them, okay? Make sure you pair up the +2 duration with the impurities or the +2 aura with either. The only bad thing about using the impurities is that it makes our Vol haste take much longer to get enough Vol souls. Since you have 3 extra Vol abilities, taking those souls right away until we can cap our Vol haste and use that in our map. Again, make sure they're level 21. 0 quality is totally fine. We only need level 21 purities. With that setup, we will have 86 max res, which is crazy for the budget that we have set here. That is so good. We are going to be so tanky. With 6k ES, it's going to be a breeze. We are going to use the Presence of Chayula Amulet, as this is crazy value for a low life character. This gives us stun immunity, 60 chaos res, and it gives us a ton of energy shield. This is where almost 20% of the energy shield of the build comes from, because 20% of our max life is converted to flat ES, which is going to get scaled. We are still going to rock that Profane Proxy in the left ring slot, making sure it's in the left ring slot with the same exact curse that you were using before, swapping it out for vulnerability or punishment, whatever feels better. Just vibe it out. It's a red socket. It's not a big deal at all. Our ring is going to be strength, dex, and ES. However much you need and as much as you can get. Our belt is going to be a strength crystal belt, which with as much ES as you can get, perhaps even picking up a Crusader belt that has max ES on it as well. Although you can still rock the Darkness Enthroned if you need. Our flasks are going to be a Quartz Flask with Warding, a Taste of Hate to take 20% of physical damage as cold, which we have a lot of cold resistance. So 20% of fizz damage, it's getting very mitigated, which is very good. We're going to use a Basalt Flask with Staunching, a Silver Flask with Warding, and an Alchemist Quicksilver Flask of Adrenaline. We are going to still use the Primordial Might for aggressive golems, Anima Stone for +2 max. We are going to use the Energy from Within to convert this hybrid node all to Energy Shield, because increases and reductions in life radius are transformed to Energy Shield. So each of these becomes 8 max ES, and this one becomes 16 increased max ES. So good. We are going to use Conqueror's Potency, like we talked about before, to get that 3% increase effect of non-curse auras. The Intuitive Leap to reach the Charisma Wheel below Trickster. And we're going to socket in a Primordial Harmony for extra golem damage and regeneration, alongside some cooldown recovery rates so our Carrion Golem can leap slam around much more often. Now let's talk about the low life gem setup. We're going to use level 21 Carrion Golem, and you do not need any of these Awakened gems. Minion damage, brutality, melee fizz, multi-strike, and damage on full life. Notice we do not have the Impale setup anymore. That's because we have so much aura effect that we can run a Dread Banner with the Divergent quality, giving you and nearby allies have another 5%. So this means our Dread Banner gives 25 chance to impale. That gets scaled 3 times. Since we have 300% increased aura effect, this gives us more than enough with 1 rotten claw on our large cluster to give our Carrion Golems enough impale chance. In our Prism Guardian that will get reserved onto our life, we are going to use a Pride to make enemies take increased physical damage, Discipline for a whole ton of ES, and Haste to make us and our minions move and attack faster, alongside Vol Haste for a 1-button extra super boost in speed. Again, going to global 6666 for all of the Spectres, still using the They of Tull, Carnage, and Host Chieftain. In our helmet, which will be a +3 minion helm, we are going to use Meat Shield so that our minions take less damage and are defensive, meaning they keep near us, and alongside giving them taunt. We're going to use an Animate Guardian at level 20 or 21 with the Divergent quality if you can afford it, although default quality is more than enough, a Raise Zombie, and a Raise Spectre. We are going to have all of these in our helmet. That will give it a lot of plus levels, which gives them a lot of life. Like we talked about before, our Sintrek is going to be +2 aura or +2 duration if poor, making sure you use impurities if you're doing the duration setup. Also, we are going to put in our Skitterbots for the shocking aura, which is very good. It's how we shock our enemies. Our gloves are going to be Stone Golem, Feeding Frenzy, and increased duration and phase run. This is where we can get our phase run buff to last almost as long as its cooldown, which is very cool. Almost all of the time, we are going to have 40 extra movement speed if we grab the Anomalous phase run, which gives us 20% increased skill effect duration. Linked to increased duration, our phase run lasts nearly as long as its cooldown of 4 seconds. As you can see here, our phase run lasts 3.5 seconds with the cooldown being 4. So we only have phase run down for a ½ second every 4 seconds, which is pretty good for a 40% movement buff. Again, in the left side only, we are going to use Vulnerability or Punishment, whichever you think feels right. In our unset ring, we will use a Chaos Golem, and in our weapon is going to be our Dread Banner, a level 20 Blood Magic, which is very important, and Vitality. Notice my unreserved life is at about 7% right now. If I lose Blood Magic levels enough, I will go all the way down where I cannot reserve all of my auras anymore. So, it's best to just get it at level 20, and you do not have to worry about Vitality levels then, or anything at all. Now, for the low life, expensive version, we are going to pick up an extra cluster setup. We are going to drop some of the energy shield that we had picked up from the cheap version, and instead we get an entire extra cluster setup. In this large cluster setup, it's going to be the exact same mediums before, 6 passive with First Among Equals and Replenishing Presence, or Replenishing Presence with 6 passives that each get 25% increased effect. Now, on your large clusters, you only need 1 Rotten Claw. So on the second one, you can get Renewal, Primordial Bond, and Feasting Fiends. The most 2 important being Renewal and Feasting Fiends. Primordial Bond is a little bit expensive, so don't worry about that one just yet. Now for the items, we will still use Cold Iron Point, but we're going to try to go for a Prism Guardian Corruption to take another 8% of fizz damage as cold, which is very, very good. We're going to flesh out our +3 minion helm, now getting Socketed Gems supported by level 20 minion life to give our minions even more life and to make sure our Animate Guardian, which we will be investing into, will not die. We're going to pick up a Chavron's Wrapping for more energy shield, the +2 Aura Sintrek, which you can kind of save for last if you don't mind not having Vol Haste up. Still rocking Presence of Chiula with Ravenous Horde Anoint, the Profane Proxy, getting extra ES strength and max ES on the ring with a Crusader, and still having that same exact belt from before with strength, ES, percent ES, and some chaos res if you can. You can also swap this out very easily for a Headhunter, as the Headhunter will solve a lot of your strength and dex needs when you put a... Our flasks are going to be a very well-rolled roomies for extra flat armor and free block. The Taste of Hate from before, because we want to take fizz damage as extra cold. Still using a Basalt for extra fizz mitigation. Now that we have 90 max res, Chaos and Fizz is all we need to worry about. Silver of Warding for no curses, and Onslaught for 20 move speed, and the Alchemist for 88 move speed. Another big upgrade here is going to be a Watcher's Eye, with taking fizz damage from hits as fire or cold, depending on which purity you get. It doesn't matter which one you get. The discipline is also going to be just like a flex. Don't worry about that. The physical damage as an element is the most important part. Just make sure that you don't get a Purity of Elements one. That does have a higher roll, but we do not run Purity of Elements because it's kind of a wasted slot and it takes up too much mana reservation. Lastly, let us talk about the Animate Guardian setup. This is going to be a little change from my SO Spectre build because I do not want anybody's AG to die anymore. So let's go to the Animate Guardian setup and choose our Animate Guardian. Now, on the AG, don't pay attention to these stats yet because it's taking into account my gear. But on this Animate Guardian, you're going to use Kingmaker to give your Carrion Golems and you Culling Strike and Fortify and some Crit Multi and Rarity. And the big change here, and you need to hit all of these check boxes, okay? You need the Mask of the Stitch Demon, and on your body armor, you need to craft gain 10% of max life as extra max. Yes, I have that craft. You also need to pick up Grave Intentions to get even more of your minions' max life as extra energy shield. Very important, because reading this, our AG will have its energy shield start at 0. It cannot gain energy shield, but it regenerates 1% of its life per 500 max ES that it has. And if we go to our gear setup where our AG is boosted, we can see that our Animate Guardian has 71,000 life. With that body armor and the Grave Intentions on the tree, it gets 16,000 ES, giving it 28,000 life regenerated per second. If your Animate Guardian dies, it was to some real dumb stuff, okay? You got unlucky. I don't know if it was a metamorph. I hope you didn't go into Hall of Grandmaster. But with 28,000 life regenerated per second, dude, I'm pogging in my pants about 2,000 ES per second on me. My AG is getting 14 times as much life regen that I thought was crazy. It's getting 28,000 per second. All right, your AG is regenerating almost half of its life per second. It should never, ever, ever die, especially with the Fortify and the Snow Cloak from Day of Tull, and all of your max resistances buffing it as well. Just to make sure that it doesn't die, we are going to give it Replica Volkurs because it does need some Chaos resistance. You need to give it 55 Chaos res. It starts with 20, you gotta get to 55, or it will die to some dumb Chaos damage. Also, get move speed and Chaos res on the boots. You want it to keep up with you, right? You want your AG right next to you giving you Fortify? Well, give it some move speed and some Chaos res because you gotta get 55. We get 41 from here if you get the top roll, and whatever else you need to get 55 total on the boots. All right, this should be the unkillable AG setup. Just don't go in Hall of the Grandmaster, and be careful of some metamorphs, all right? Those metamorphs will gank your AG out of existence, so be careful. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe if you yoink my POB. Please put a lot of time into that. Just hit the subscribe button. It costs you nothing. Also, if you want, and if you got some questions, come over to Twitch, all right? Hang out with the boys. Ask your questions. I'll answer them, and I'll only flame you just a little bit, okay? If you got some dumb question, it'll just be a little bit, all right? But it'll be all fun, okay? Anyways, I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.